this series, we're talking all about how you can be legally and ethically using AI-generated content to help build out your publishing business. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can be using an AI generator like ChatGPT to build out your side characters, because we know that every character is the main character of their own stories. We want to make sure that you have three-dimensional characters, not two-dimensional characters, and that they have their own stories, their own things that are doing inside of your books or before the books start. This is going to help you to make sure you have those well-rounded characters, so let's take a look at how to do it. The more information you include in your prompt, the better outcome you're going to get, and the more clarifying questions you ask, the more it's going to shape what kind of content you're getting back from your AI generator. Now, keep in mind, it does learn from the past. If you've been doing this a while, if you've been following this series, you know that the information you're giving is now shaping how it's giving information back. I've corrected the ChatGPT prompt several times, and it's learned from that, and it shapes how I'm getting information back. So the more you interact with it, the more you engage with it, and the more information you feed it, the more it's going to learn and give you what you want. So you're training your AI as you go. You don't necessarily have to repeat yourself, but if you are jumping in for the first time, there's some information you need to give it up front so it knows what's going on. Let's take a look at how we can be using something like ChatGPT to be able to then create your three-dimensional side characters. So we're looking at the supporting cast inside of your story. How can we make sure they're not 2D characters? I get this question a lot, and this is a fantastic way to make sure they are the main characters of their own stories. So I'm going to come in and I am going to pop in a prompt that I have written. We're going to break down what this looks like and how you can be doing this as well. Speaking of which, if you are liking this entire series and you want follow-ups with specific prompts you can be feeding to your AI generator to get the information that you need to create the backstories, the worlds, the histories, the things that you are using in your marketing to make sure you're saving yourself time and effort inside of your publishing career, let me know and we'll do some follow-up videos. So I've specifically said, and you can do this if you're new too, you do not have to do this if you've been doing this for a while. I've said I'm a multi-time best-selling fiction author. I broke down what types of stories that I wrote so that it knows what's going on. I then jump in and say, I need a backstory from one of my side characters in my novel. Her name is Erica. She lives in a dystopian community. Now, guys, this is a real character from one of my series. If you have read the Jaded Duology, it is all about a dystopian future where a girl is forced to marry the son of her father's enemy, the commander, the leader of their country, and they are going to make everybody believe that they love her and accept her into the family and then murder her and make it look like an accident to get back at her father for his rebellion when she was a child. And now her only hope is to make him fall in love with her for real so that she doesn't die. And so this is a side character from that story. She's in the first book a little bit. She's heavier represented in the second book in the sequel. And we're going to learn a little bit more about her backstory. So her name is Erica. She lives in a dystopian community. And then I drew a line. We'll see how that one goes. I've kind of separated the blurb from what's going on next. You'll understand it. It says, here's the blurb from the novel that this is from. And so I've given the blurb for my story. You can pause if you want to read it. And then I go on with the line. I've kind of separated those things. And I say, in the story, Erica is a candle maker, and she has a shop in the town that Jade sometimes uses to hand off secret messages to her aunt and her father. Erica is a quiet part of the resistance against the evil commander who runs the country. Eventually, at the end of the story, she ends up dating Lucas, the politician who helped save Jade from being murdered, but they have limited interaction in public to avoid the villains from knowing their connection. They should only meet in secret groups in this backstory you're creating. So I said, she's going to end up with this guy. He is important. She does have to have some interactions, but they're limited. They're in a group setting. And they're secret. I'm giving it information. The more information I can give it, the more it can give back to me. I could say, hey, Erica is a candle maker. She's got a shop in town. Jade sometimes uses it to hand off the secret messages and just let it go. But that's not enough information for it to give me a qualified backstory. Now, keep in mind, with this backstory, I am not using what it has done to put out as like a prequel novella. We're not doing that because we cannot copyright protect it, because anything created by AI cannot be copyright protected. If it gives me an idea, now I can take it and write it myself. That's totally fine. It gives me like a timeline, or if it gives me ideas and I can fix those things up and then actually write it myself, now we're good to go. But this is just giving me a backstory so that I know who Erica is. This is a good idea for me to do while I'm writing my story. Now I'm doing it after the fact so you can see, and we're going to see how accurate it is compared to who she is inside of the story. But if I were using this for my upcoming stories, I would be asking for the best friend. I would be asking for the side characters. I'd be asking for the other people who are running around inside of the story so I know what their deal is. Yes, I can give little bits of information, and I can use some of these touchstones inside of the story, and I refer back to it in my character Bibles. This is a really good way to make sure that every character is their own main character in their story, even if they're a supporting cast member in the story we're writing. So then I go on to say, I need a backstory on Erica's upbringing with the quiet resistance, how she came to own a candle shop used to quietly work against the commander and his government, and what other operations she runs behind the scenes. So I've given 3 different things we've seen from past episodes. It's probably going to spit a list out for me. And this is going to help me to be able to develop her as a character. I also say story should touch on her childhood, but mostly focus on her 18 to 22 life, because that's kind of when the story is taking place. And I then end with saying it needs to be 10 or more paragraphs long. By saying that, it gives me longer information. If I just didn't say that, it might just give me something really short. So the more information you can give it, the better it's going to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the button. It's going to think about it for a minute. And it is going to then start creating content for me so that we can see what's going on here. Here we go. Erica's story begins at the heart of the dystopian community that's controlled by the ruthless commander, born into a family with a long history of resistance against tyranny. Oh, okay. Okay, that doesn't quite work, but sure. Erica was raised with an unwavering sense of justice and a deep yearning for freedom. Her parents, both active members of the resistance, instilled in her the importance of standing up against oppression, even in the face of great danger. Okay. Growing up, Erica witnessed the commander's regime tighten its grip on the country. Okay. Suppressing dissidents and spreading fear among the citizens. Kind of, but not really, because that's not how the story works. It is not quite like that. She saw friends and neighbors disappear. Nope, none of that is accurate. That's not going to work. So I needed to actually give it more information about the dystopian community that I am creating. Most people in the community that I've written don't know what's going on. It's like a divide. Half of it is for the commander. They see nothing wrong with whatever's going on. Half of it is aware that there's some not so great things. There's some shady stuff going on, but there's no like disappearances. So I should have been clearer about what that was. So there's more information going on here. At the age of 18, Erica took over her family's candle making business. Okay, so the family does it. It's not a her thing. I can clarify that if need be. The candles Erica crafted were more than just decorative. They contained hidden compartments. Girlfriend has got it going on here. We've got very interesting things. And so I can use this to ask those questions to kind of develop what's going on here. Let's see. Beyond her candle making and coordination duties, Erica also became a skilled spy. Under the guise of an ordinary citizen, she blended seamlessly into the community, gathering valuable intelligence about the commander's plans and activities. Not really, but okay. Her ability to remain unnoticed allowed her to move freely. Yes, that works. Let's see. But it wasn't until Lucas, a charismatic and influential politician, joined the resistance that, okay, nope, he's been there the entire time. So I need to give it so much information about what I've already created to fix these things. I could tell it that information, it would fix it. But for the sake of this conversation, let's just pretend I'm writing the story right now. Pretend it's not based on a story I've already written. This is a good background. So they knew they needed to keep their romance hidden. The commander forces would stop at nothing to squash any kind of resistance and exposing their connections. So they met in secret, always on guard. Give me examples of how she and Lucas met in secret. So we're going to ask questions. Secret. Okay. Secret. We can spell because we're authors. We don't have to worry about that. So I've been asking those questions. It's going to give me that information. Usually it scrolls to the bottom, but I was reading on. So here we go. In an abandoned warehouse, an underground passage. None of this stuff works for the content that I've already created, but let's just keep saying that this is a new story that I'm writing. So I'm creating this two-dimensional character. In my story, even if it wasn't the Jaded duology, she would be a side character. She would be kind of showing up in Lucas's life a little bit. He's kind of showing up in the main character's lives a little bit. We don't need to know a ton about Erica, but if I know that they are hanging out in bookstores in a forest clearing, if I know where she spends her time outside of that candle shop, that's going to allow me to give her more appearances or change her appearances. It's going to allow me to have her have knowledge. So let's just say they hang out in a forest a lot. And if we know she hangs out in a bookstore a lot, now maybe she has taken her time while she's waiting for Lucas to show up to be reading books that could potentially help them. Now she can be sitting there reading books about the plant life and the things out in the forest. Maybe she actually has to learn about some of the poisonous plants out there so she can make a toxin to give to Lucas, to give to Jade, to destroy the commander. I don't know. There's lots of things that I could be doing from this information. So even if I don't use all of these things, let's just say we've got her in a bookstore waiting for Lucas, reading the books, learning more things, getting more knowledge that could potentially help with the resistance. How later in the book series could that help me? How could that impact what's going on inside of the story? There is poison. There's a lot of poison inside of this story. So that knowledge could potentially impact that. Let's just say there is a vial of poison and we don't even have to discuss it inside of this story, but it could be a fun fact for later on that Erica had a hand in designing the poison that would eventually poison fill in the blank character inside of the story. And even if it has nothing to do with it, that could be implementations. And then in your interviews, then in your conversations that you have, you can give those fun little facts to fans. Now, let me take you back just a little bit, because for this specific story, I actually created an interactive choose your own adventure game that I had on Facebook for a very long time, where people could go in and choose their own adventure and play a game to run missions for Jade's mentor, Mr. Arrow. And so they were able to then make choices, go places, and depending on which path they took, if you read the book again, they actually dropped off things in different locations or picked up information that were then inside of the story. They didn't know it just reading the book. You wouldn't have known that you were a character inside of the story, but I chose to make them a character inside of the game that then placed something in a location that then Jade used that piece of whatever inside of the story. They became a character unknowingly. So now you can use this back information to say, well, Erica met in the bookstore, read the books, created information and knowledge about this particular area that was then used in this other part of the story. And if people know these different pieces of her backstory, if you talk about them in interviews, if you pop them into prequel bonus scenes or things like that, all of that has implications on the story that you've written. So now you're developing these two-dimensional characters into three-dimensional characters so that people can be more alive, that people can be more connected with what's going on. And the more clarifying questions you ask, the more you're going to be getting with their backstory. You can also use this specifically to take this information and create the side character stories. So, for example, in my Golden Trilogy, I have a lot of characters hanging out in the third book. There's a bunch of characters we meet in the second book that are very important in the third book, but they're not always on page. Sometimes they're off running their own missions because it's a Goldilocks retelling where they're trying to defeat the evil society and all of the things, and it's very spy-like, very assassin-like Goldilocks. And these characters are not always on the page. They go off and do their own missions and then come back. So what do I need to know about that? I'm probably not going to sit there and write these side missions. It's not going to be helpful to me unless I'm using them as bonus scenes or prequels or whatever, but there's other characters I would rather focus on for those. So for some of these secondary supporting characters, as I call them, they're off running their own missions. Maybe I need to know what happens. Maybe I need to give information into the system and get that story. I can ask for that in paragraph form, write a short story that is 12 paragraphs long about what this character is doing on this mission. The mission is to do X, Y, and Z. Characters going are X, Y, and Z characters. They're going to be gone from this period of time to this period of time. Here are the villains. Here's what they're going to encounter. Write this. And it can pop up a couple of paragraphs, a couple of pages long of what that character has been through on that mission. And then when they come back, they discuss it with the main characters, and it has implications on the whole war that's going on. I don't need to write that for myself, but if I know what's going on, awesome. Usually I would do that with like a bullet point form. I would say this happens, this happens, this happens. But if I want to be interesting about it, pop it into something like ChatGPT, let it pop that out for me, and I can use that to then inform it. I can refer back to some of these things, but because I'm not using it, I don't have to worry about the copyright implications on it. I'm good to go. It's doing some of the work for me that is unnecessary for what I'm doing, but helps to inform what I'm creating. So you can create three-dimensional characters within the context of your story or the backstory that has implications on your story with something like an AI generator. Follow along for more, because we are continuing this series to help you legally and ethically create AI-generated content that you can use to build your publishing platform. So we're talking character development, world building. We're talking about idea generating. We are talking about timelines and getting some of those statistical things in line for you so that you don't have to do it yourself. We're talking about your marketing. We're talking about content creation. We're talking about all the things where you can legally and ethically use it to help build your platform without having to worry about any of the issues and the icky side of potentially using AI. If you've got questions, drop those down below and follow along for more as we continue the series. And we drop daily videos to help you level up on your social media marketing, your writing, your publishing life to make this your most profitable year ever. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.